You might wonder why we're going to talk about the gifts of liminal space on Earth Day, because I think it's the perfect day to talk about it. We've been given time to see the tops of the Himalayas, to notice the air clear in Delhi, to watch the whales and the dolphins begin to dance and play in the water, listen to birds we haven't heard in years. All kinds of wonderful things have happened to the environment because we've stayed home. We've stopped flying, stopped driving, stopped running around. It's become quiet in the world. For 12 months, which is about to end, is ending in some places. So it's time for us to begin to appreciate the time we spent in quiet and to notice the gifts that we've been given and perhaps to find a way to hold on to some of them. Thinking about that, we have Jean, who has just had her book written about 10 years ago, republished. The title of the book is Like a Tree. We've become interested in trees again. We've become interested in the birds and everything that's going on around us. Maybe we can keep our interest high and honor some of those environmentalists from years ago. John Muir. Jean walks in the Muir Woods every morning. Maybe we can think about Jane Goodall and Rachel Carson's and honor Greta Thunberg, who is really going to be our environmental heroine. Thinking about all of that, I'm going to ask Jean to ring a, I don't know what you call it, tap, beat on, touch her Tibetan bowl, which creates a wonderful sound. So I'm going to ask you, Jean, to tell us about the sound and then to start us off with that.
The sound of it, the vibration sound of a Tibetan bowl or bell. This is a bowl. It's a brass bowl that sits next to my computer. And when I strike it, what happens is a vibration goes out, and I think everyone will feel it at the center of the chest between our breasts, because this is the heart chakra. And one of the things about starting any circle, any Zoom circle with this sound, is that we are not just little stamps that we see in front of on our screen, but we feel being in this circle, all linked at the level of the heart. So feel the vibration, feel it in the center of your chest at the heart chakra, and breathe it in, and let us all be part of a big circle. We are the sort of like starting dough in making bread. The small group of us that are here right now, link and be the model for the many that will follow and listen to this online. And online is sort of almost being eternal. It's like when somebody needs to hear something, get the right word, it's out there. And they too will start with a sound that we feel in our heart.
Conversations, I think, have become the new way of us communicating with each other. It's much better than speeches and much better than panels. We can just enter into a friendly conversation about different subjects. So with that, we have Jean and Anne going to talk about the gifts of liminal space as it connects to Earth Day. In any place you want to start is perfect. Jean, since you've written your book and you've had it republished, maybe you want to just start us off.
Well, the book, Like a Tree, is out in softcover, and it's not just a reprint. It's a reprint of what I've written as text, but it has a whole new, heartfelt introduction by Terry Tempest Williams, who lives in Utah and is an environmentalist who teaches on the East Coast and all over the world. And Terry and the other people on the cover become like a circle of themselves. And so I really like this edition so much better than just the one in hardcover with me on it, because this one has Julia Butterfly Hill up in her tree. And you know, she was an activist who made a tremendous difference without an intention of what it was she started out to do. She just kind of went to see what some friends were doing in California, and were trying to save an old growth forest. And so she went there and watched them, and they all climbed trees. She climbed the tree, and she stayed in her tree, which she named Luna, for over 2 years. And meanwhile, all the other activists at night and at various other times when the corporate lumber people went away, they would take care of her up there and send up food and things like this. So it was a team effort, even though it appeared to be one woman being up in the tree. And that was Julia. And then there's a picture of Wangari Maathai, who started the Greenbelt movement, also started it without realizing what it would lead to, what it would inspire, and how she would become a voice to save forests, because she got a Nobel Prize, Peace Prize for what she started, was what small groups of women growing little trees and watering them and then planting them. And then pretty soon it led to the Greenbelt movement and inspired so many of us. And she had this wonderful energy, thanks to the Millionth Circle and our effort to try to have a Fifth Women's World Conference. we went there and we met Wangari there, and then so Like a Tree, how trees, women, and tree people can save the planet. I mean, this is what Earth Day needs to do. It needs to really realize that we are in danger as we cut down all the trees, and we don't allow women, or women are not being allowed reproductive rights. The net result is too many people, not enough trees, and the disaster of global warming, and the eventuality in a very short time, if we have global warming that goes up and up, we will soon reach a point where we are, the question of will we evolve or will we disintegrate? I mean, the planet and ourselves. And that's exactly where we are in this liminal time between what was, when there were plenty of trees and enough people, and now, although this particular liminal time began as the pandemic. And we have been in a liminal time, which comes from the word threshold in Latin. And when you enter a liminal time, you cannot go back to what was, because what was really changed. And until we're in this in-between place where what we do here changes what next. And that's where we all are right now. And we are witnesses, we are activists. We can make a difference.
I had this wonderful story of Julia Butterfly. She came down to Florida. She was in Fort Myers, and she talked about, of course, when she's up in this tree, this is hundreds of feet up, and you've got about 4 ecosystems because of the different height. But she just found it is like this most amazing world. It's an entirely different world that she was. And of course, but one of the stories, so she gets used to that and she lives there. is that there were 2 hunters, maybe 3, and they were shooting up in the tree. And so with her voice, she yells down, she says, "Hello." She says, "I'm up here." They started a conversation. They formed a connection. They left and they came back about 2 days later with organic food for her. And what she talks about is the relationship that she had to all of nature, to all of the, there's bugs up there, there's birds up there, there's squirrels up there, there's all kinds of things up there. So she developed this amazing relationship with nature. But she also then, for her, there was no sides. She really got that we're all one. And so these hunters for her were humanity, and she wanted to relate with them. And she totally transformed them. And so it was like, for me, in this, and I think that's what is happening in this liminal time, we are now having time to listen. And I will tell about what I did, Rosemary, for our little 2-minute thing, because I think it's important. A little 2-minute promo that I was all set to trying to be my best. And so I was going to start out with Rachel Carson, and she wrote the book, it was Silent Scream. I looked at the video. Rosemary said, did you know that you said Silent Scream? I said, "Oh, really?" And then so we laughed and laughed and laughed and did it again. And I was, did it right. So I said spring. But again, I think what's happened for us in this liminal time is to hear the silent screams of nature, is to really hear the silent pain that doesn't always make the news, whether it's racial justice, whether it's all how we treat one another in humanity, but certainly our relationship to Earth. And, we have not yet, the majority of us, had this major connection to trees, to the water, to the elements, that we see ourselves as part of that. And I think that's, and for us being in the Million Circle, which I'm so excited to be with the 2 of you as part of the Million Circle, is it's all based on relationships and really that sacred listening and that heart connection. So for me to be able to speak on Earth Day, Mother's Day, really, it's Mother's Day. I'm just so thrilled, so thrilled. So, yes.
Well, Anne, I just remember visiting you in Florida when you took me to the Appalachian Center. And then we also went to that other nature center where as soon as we sat down, every bird that could possibly be there just started flying in front of us and singing. Do you remember?
Yes.
Incredible.
And those little bunting birds, not everybody gets to see them, and they're only there for a short period of time. They're beautiful. They are just so tropical colors. And it's usually only at the bird feeder. And Rosemary and I are sitting at the end of just sitting down, and here they all came. And it was just magical. Magical.
Good things going on out there.
Good things, yeah. And one of the things that Rachel Carson did say, what she did was with her niece and with other young children, and I've just heard this, is to take young children out as soon as you can into nature. But don't say, now here is the red-winged blackbird and here is this. Just let them see and observe the birds, and they can call them whatever they want to, because they're not going to be into names. They're going to be into look at there and look at there and look at there and look at there. And, I've spent quite a bit of time in Africa, and when you go there on the safari, you're constantly looking in the bush to say, oh, over there, over there. And that's, I think, what we need to do now. I think that's, once we can get out And I'm lucky I can get out in nature, but we need to just go out and just be and look and feel and have our heart chakras.
True. And I was resonating with your sense that Earth Day could be Mother's Day. And it reminded me of the days in which, you know, we started out with our Father who art in heaven as a prayer in the Christian faith. But I remember the time when it was changed. It wasn't Earth Day, it was just women together, to Our Mother who art the earth. And to really start to realize how our mother, we were all came out of a biological mother. We were, each of us human persons were born inside a woman, inside a uterus, was just two cells that got together, sperm and an egg, and it developed from that to human beings in about 9 months. And then when the baby is actually strong enough to live in the atmosphere, the uterus starts to let the baby, the fetus at that point, it's not considered a baby, it's a fetus, because it's has been taking in oxygen for that 8 to 9 months through the placenta. And the placenta has taken the waste away and brought the oxygen in and brought the nutrients in. And so this little microscopic union becomes a new baby. And the new baby comes out only when it can actually have lungs that are developed enough that once it gets through the birth canal into the world, it can take its first breath or first cry and enter the atmosphere. Well, the atmosphere for all living things is the same as the placenta, that our mother, the earth, provides every living thing a very similar things. Human beings breathe in oxygen and we breathe out carbon dioxide, and the placenta is really are really the trees, because the trees at night give off oxygen, and during the day usually take in the carbon dioxides and other gases and all. And so here we are in this living atmosphere that we are related to, and every plant and every living thing is also part of it. Now, male people have said something to the effect that how can you say that the earth is a living thing? After all, the center of it is molten lava or something. It's not alive. How can you say that the planet is a living thing? And then you look at a tree, and the inside of a tree is not exactly alive. It's just the edge around the very edge of the tree. As a tree grows, it keeps having layers. And so the planet and trees and us, we're all really related. And that's why it's terribly important that we recognize how we are part of our mother, the earth, and all living things that have grown on this earth and in the water, and all, we're part of this whole thing. And the other thing that I think that is especially amazing is the beauty that we experience by being able to be on this beautiful blue planet. And there's been a growth in consciousness in a very short time. I mean, it was only towards I think it was 1970 when we saw the Earth from outer space. And she was one, and she was beautiful. And it was against the void of space. And we could see our planet, our mother, the earth, for the first time. And it is the same relationship as we had as kids with our own parents, our own mothers, is that when we're little, we just assume that our mother's supposed to provide, take care of us, and she either does it well or she doesn't. And we don't think of her as being separate. until we grow into adulthood. And she has grown older. And now we understand that she wasn't perfect. Nobody's mother is perfect. In fact, if you had a perfect mother, you wouldn't have a difficult childhood to push against and to grow character out of. So you might say that it works well to have some problems with mother, because almost everybody does. But anyway, the idea is that when we emerge into adulthood, we can look at our relationship to others, including our mother, for the first time as vulnerable. As soon as we are actually
Yeah.
grown up enough, we can recognize that adults are not perfect and our particular mother is who she is. And as we get older and become mothers ourselves, we understand a lot more than we did when we were kids and were judgmental. And I think our relationship to our planet, the Earth, is what humanity needs to do as well. Needs to realize that our mother, the Earth, needs us to take care of some of the problems that the Earth has, that we caused.
Well, and maybe, not maybe, but just look at the connection that we have as women. And, we didn't need, as boys need to do, to separate so quickly from mom. In many cases, even if you didn't have the best mom, you still didn't need to have this separation from mom. So we are separate from Earth. We are, the boys had to learn that. So I think that is one of the things. I think the other thing is because we're so connected through our menstrual cycle to the moon, to who we are as women who do give birth, who do have a deeper connection. Someone said, instead of a higher consciousness now that has gone like way out into the stars, we need to have that deeper consciousness. But I think it's easier for us as women to have that. I think we can, that oxytocin, that whole thing of bonding. And I think the other thing is we don't need to conquer, but we need to, it's like we don't need to go out and conquer the world. But what we do is, well, we also clean up their messes, but which we're all having to do for poor mom. But there is a biological, besides psychological, and I think spiritual connection that we have that's easier for us as women when we get in touch with our bodies. And one of the best exercises I have ever done, which is this Nature Connect, was to go out, and it's really simple, and you go out and, it's like, here's my little plant. You can't see it. But outside, and you can do it inside if you can't get out. And you just, center yourself, and then you begin to commune with that plant or that tree, and you say, you feel the oxygen coming into you. You feel that exchange. The oxygen, you just like, I'm breathing in this oxygen that this tree, this plant has given me, and then my carbon dioxide is going out. And to me, it's one of the best exchanges of energy and the most intimate exchanges of energy in the world.
That gives me pause to think about that. Of course, I get up in the morning and I walk around to every plant in the house and I touch it and say good morning. But I never thought about standing there and taking oxygen from the plant. That's really a captivating thought.
You're so good, Rosemary, and your books and all of the wonderful exercises you have done around spirituality and money. And then you think about oxygen being that money, being that currency of the heart. I mean, try to live without oxygen, or like if try to live without water, you can do that for several days, but you cannot do it very long without oxygen. And so to me, it's like when we're looking at, looking at a relationship that we need to have as humans, which is just take, or conquer, whatever, but to have it truly equal, to begin on that kind of level. And one of the things that's happening in our state, which not a lot of good things happen in Florida because of our politics, but we have 2 counties that are having, it's called Earth Rights, that is similar to human rights. And it's a charter, and it's the Earth Has Rights. 2 counties have passed that. And we're working to get on the East Coast, we're working on getting that here. And that seems to be something that people are resonating with, that they're not making it a political issue. I don't know why, but I'm just so grateful they're not.
Interesting. I haven't heard of anything happening like that in Connecticut. How about California, Jean?
On Earth Day, it is a good thing to think about the concept and whether you are a tree person or would like to be a tree person, or actually the probability that maybe back when you were a kid, that there was something very special about some trees or a tree close by. And there was something about how you climbed a tree, and from what seemed high up, you had a different perspective of things. A tree often was a sanctuary where a person who was always caught up in the middle of the goings on amongst people, they could be by themselves with a tree.
Mm-hmm.
And there are people now who understand that if you go to a tree, the tree has sap that rises at a certain rate. And the people that meditate go lean against the tree. And studies can show that after a while, the rise and fall of sap and the rise and fall of vessels in the human start to synchronize. So that there's something about the feelings that tree people have. A tree person actually loves trees and often loves particular trees and sees them separately. Like we see, you could say, I love humanity, but you can say that, but you can also have troubles appreciating each individual human. And people who talk about trees sometimes do that too. And these are the people often who just see it generically or see it as so many feet of lumber, while a tree person actually notices trees. And if you started out early and were drawn to trees to climb them or to sit under them or to draw them, I mean, when you start to draw a tree when you are in the 3rd or 4th grade and you just draw the tree, you start to really see it, and you see it differently from other trees. And all of this leads to a certain level of consciousness about our connection to trees on Earth Day, which is a very good thing to remember.
Because of COVID and my great fear, because I have COPD, of contracting COVID, I tried to stay away from people, even though I went for a walk every day. And the only place I could do that successfully was in a cemetery. So I would go for long walks in this wonderful cemetery in Fairfield that has become an arboretum.
Oh, yeah.
And they have labeled all their trees. So you can actually walk around and stand in front of a tree and read all about it, know where it came from, what country has most of them, what's going on inside of it, what color the flowers are, all kinds of things that I never knew. So this has now become one of my favorite places to go. So when someone would say to me, do you want to go for a walk? I'll say, yeah, meet me in the cemetery. It really is a wonderful place. And so I've learned more about trees because of COVID and this particular cemetery. It is fascinating how old they are, how much they grow in a year, and the fast growing ones, the slow growing ones. It's really quite fascinating.
One of, the tree that you don't have in your book, Jean, is the mangrove tree. But then you can't hug a mangrove tree. No, you can't. But if you live down here, you love the mangrove trees, and I'll tell you why. But the mangrove tree, their roots are like this. So they come out, so the roots are like this, and then it goes way up to have the, all the leaves. But you can't, and it's murky mud, it's mud. And if it's on dry land, it's kind of prickly. I mean, you can't really go up and hug a mangrove tree. But you
know that.
So your love relationship for mangroves becomes because you appreciate that the cleanest water will be where mangrove trees are, even though it looks tannic, and because it changes the salt water so that it is a nursery for baby fish and all kinds of marine life. And without the mangrove, you would not have the new life. And the mangrove, of course, is a shelter for the hurricane. The hurricane you can go through, it is a barrier. It's the best barrier you could ever have. And the mangrove trees, like other trees now, are starting to move because of the climate change. They're moving north, So it's like, but anyway, I wanted to, and when you were down in Florida, I never took you to the mangrove trees. But no, I don't know if you ever saw one. The next time you come, I'll bring you to the mangrove trees. And when you go out to what's called thousands of islands, those are all mangrove trees in the Everglades. And so they have these little pods, and then they can just create this more island and island. And what's nice about it is that, humans really can't get into a mangrove grove because it's so non-human friendly.
Gina, I want to take us not necessarily away from the mangrove trees, but to the redwoods and muir woods, because a number of years ago, Brian Swim and the board of Global Education Associates met in a sanctuary space inside the Muirwood Forest. And it was so wonderful just to stand there with this cosmologist and talk about not only the trees, but the planet and the connections, cosmologically, the connections that we all have. And I know that you walk in this sanctuary. You actually called it your sanctuary one day. You walk there every morning.
Not every morning, but I walk there now about once a week, and it's right over the hill from where I live. And the part of the woods or the forest that you probably were at when Brian was talking is called Cathedral Grove.
That's right. Yes.
And I was also reminded when Anne was speaking about the Ents in the fantasy book about such things. And the Ents were the old souls who walked on this earth until, as they get older and think more and whatever, they would put down roots, and they were the old trees, the Ents. and the old trees are the oldest living things on this earth. They really go back millions of years. Once they grew from being just like vegetation, and some tree began forming a trunk, and out of that whole new concept grew forests. They became the oldest living things on Earth. And so when I walk around among the redwoods, the tallest ones, and by the way, they represent only 3% of what's left of the redwoods in California. I mean, all of Europe used to be a forest.
Yeah.
There were redwoods up and down the coast of California and further north. And the forests of Muir Woods and further north that are ancient redwoods, they only make up 3% now of what used to be here. But each tree that still remains is an old tree. There are young ones that grow about around it now too, but there are trees that in Muir Woods, one of the tallest one is something like 368 feet, which is about 30, it's about 25 or 30 stories in height. And imagine it just year after year, the tree keeps growing and grows on the edges. And they're very remarkable. And so to be able to be among the trees and to sort of feel the privilege of being with elders is
Yeah.
one of the feelings that I have walking among the trees. And if you walk in woods where they, like Muir Woods and other places, given what the trees do about within the leaves do, providing oxygen, it's very good oxygen to breathe among the woods, because they make oxygen, take in carbon dioxide. And also in California, where it's getting warmer and warmer, and in the Bay Area where there's fog, a lot of the trees have become pine trees. I mean, trees, they've grown into species like pines, and the pine needles take the fog and they condense it into drops of water, and they water their own roots. It doesn't rain that much around here, but there has been a lot of fog in the Bay Area. And so this particular tree, the ones with the needles, which are all the pine trees, that's what they do. I mean, trees are remarkable. And those of us that appreciate trees as kids because we climb them, and as adults, as we get to know what they do for us, and as aesthetic people who just appreciate the aesthetics of trees, we are tree people. We care about trees, and we feel a relationship to them because, of course, we have a relationship to them. They provide the very substance we need in order to live, that oxygen business. So they are the placenta for all
And
living
our
things
lungs.
once each
Our lu-
of us
and our
are
lungs.
out of mom, you know?
And our lungs. They're still our lungs, you know?
Oh, yes, yes.
Yeah. 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 You know, I live in like a typical Florida subdivision, but because of, and you both met her, well, I don't, Jean did, Ellen Peterson, one of the best environmentalists, that my backyard would have been that would have been a golf course, but it's a nature preserve. And so I'm so totally, absolutely blessed to have all these cypress trees, which of course are needles. Now they don't grow very big in my backyard, but this is probably as old as Florida when you think about it, because it's not been touched. It was never made into an orchard. It was never done anything. But if it's on limestone, and when you go out to Corkscrew, Rosemary, which we did, if it's on limestone, they don't become real big. But when it's not on limestone, then it will go a little big. So my trees are skinny and tall. And when a hurricane comes through, you can't even tell in my backyard that it's come through.
That's amazing.
Right. Right. You know, it's just like because of their root system, and they have what is called these knees, or I don't know what it is, but a hurricane will not knock them down. So that's why they can stay for so long, you know. Now sometimes you would break the branches and everything else, or the really big ones, but you know, we've had quite a few hurricanes come through, and trees that were planted here, they will come down. Even palm trees will come down, but not in my backyard. It's amazing.
Mm.
And again, that's the needles. So when it's humid out, it looks like crystals, and then the sun hits them, it's like little crystals. It's very pretty. And it's the only tree and the only place in Florida where you have real fall, because in fall, the needles turn brown and then yellow, then brown, and then they fall off. So yeah, you think in Florida, you think just golf courses and you think fake pink flamingos or something, or you think.
Now we will think of mangrove.
You'll think of mangroves and you'll think of cypress trees. And of course, we have the most beautiful birds, which is another thing that connects you to Anaheim. And because how many times have we sang the song about women with wings?
Yes. I also was thinking as you were talking about the organization that started in England, the Tree Sisters.
Yeah.
And Claire DeBose, who founded Tree Sisters in England, has been on a couple of I see Sandy Hart is in the audience, and her organization has brought together, well, I've been able to be on a program with Claire DeBose and appreciate what Tree Sisters do to do what is needed, which is to keep planting trees all over the world, so that to support Tree Sisters is to support, and they keep a running tally of the number of trees that they are responsible for, the new ones that they are responsible for growing. And so that's one other thing, that you can be a tree activist just by supporting people like the Tree Sisters who grow trees, but you could also be part of the movement to be related to the planet and our mother, the earth, by looking after the trees around you and doing what Wangari Maathai did in areas where they had cut down the trees, bringing women together in circles to look after seedlings until they're big enough, and then to go out and actually put them in the ground. And whenever women get together with a good cause in a circle, with a sense of meaning and bonding, and know what they're doing is helping the planet or certain individuals or children or certain animals, it's an activism that makes you feel warm-hearted as well as doing good in this world. And it's a very feminine, maternal sister kind of attitude to be an activist. It has to do with looking after trees, after looking at and looking after our mother, the earth, in any way that we might.
Yeah. I was in Africa right before Wangari. I didn't meet Wangari, but it was in Kenya, but it was really when the Greenbelt project was just starting, and you would go to all the churches would give their land. Not everybody had a lot of land, but they would give their land for the seedlings. And then the women learned how to do this. And then it went on and it went on and it went on. Do you know that she not only was, not only did they prevent, and that was really the whole encroachment of the desert, because they were bringing in pine trees for cash crops, which you can't have any fodder underneath there. It's not good. It destroys your ecosystem, which is not an African ecosystem. What she also did is with those women, she trained, I don't remember, 500,000 women to be leaders. So not only were they planting and creating this whole Greenbelt movement, the women became leaders. She never not lived in the slum area. Even when she could, she chose to live with the people. And it was like, she was so congruent. You know, she was put in jail many times. She was so congruent with her passion. And the other thing I was going to say about Claire, so I mean, two things. When Gari didn't know what she was doing, she just knew she had to do something. And so you plant seedlings and then you plant more seedlings and you do that. That was the same thing with Claire. She never started an organization. She didn't know how to do this, but her passion was so there that she just said, I got to do something. And then the idea caught on and it caught on and it caught on. And that's to me what your book was, of the Million Circle. It's easy to form a circle, you know, then you get enough and then you get enough, then you get enough, and the tipping point.
You know, what results with Gari, not only did she have a passion that began small and grew and grew and grew, she had the most wonderful smile.
Yeah, she did.
And you know, I think that when you do activism from the heart and you watch it, it positively infects the others who join in the movement. And you watch things grow. I think there's something that touches the heart. And from the heart, there is that smile that one Gari had, which was wonderful.
Yes.
What I
Yes.
remember most about her is whenever she would stand up to speak, she would thank everyone who came before her because she was standing on their shoulders.
Yeah.
She never once forgot that she was one of a long parade of people who were trying to do good. When I met her she created this forest right outside Nairobi and planted every kind of tree she could find that would grow there. And when I went there, it was shortly after this man that I had loved for 12 years had died of prostate cancer. And everyone in the group was given a tree to plant. And the tree that she gave me had a little tag on it that said, the cells from this tree are part of the medication that treats prostate cancer.
Wow.
Wow.
How does that connection?
It's called synchronicity.
Another piece, right? Another synchronicity. But she was an incredible force of life.
She was.
You know, and that was like, I think it was Vandana Shiva, and it certainly was the Chipko movement in India. You know, the Chipko movement in India really was, they learned from Gandhi of nonviolent, you know, organizing, but they knew not to have their old forests cut down because it was their medicine, it was their food, it was their shelter, it was their everything. And the men had already decided that they were going to sell it for cash, for money, and they were going to be given a lot of money. So the women, what did they do? They held hands around the trees, and when the chainsaws came, they would have had to cut through the women's arms, and the men didn't do that. But it was Vandana Shiva then, who had been a scientist, who thought, oh my God, I need to learn to become an environmentalist, you know, because she could take her scientific information, but then she could see how people of the land, grassroots women, which is what Wangari started out, which is, you know, you think Claire Dubois started out, you think about those who have this attachment for the land, began to make those connections that began to make a movement. But began then, whether it's the health movement that we can get from the natural plants and everything else, or whether it is in what you call the environmental movement, but it just moves out. And then of course we have, you know, Greta, and there's going to be a 3-part series on the BBC on Greta starting today. But I mean, it's just like Greta just said, no way, you know, and actually everybody should have a little Asperger's in them because they would, you don't compromise Mother Earth. So it's just like Jean, you're very good at this. You said, you know, find your passion, your heart connection, and then just go with it. And one of the things that I think the three of us in the Million Circle does, we always have fun. We always laugh. We always have fun as we continue to do the work and make sure it's fun. And doing that work is fun.
Jean, you have really coined a phrase that I am going to steal because I love it. You say that what you're doing now is creating a dandelion effect. And I think this is so true, but it's true of all the things you've written. Every book that you've written goes out like an enormous seed packet, and people pick up the ideas and then run with them. And the only reason Anne and I know you is because we ran with your idea, the Million Circle. So maybe if you just take a moment, because we have a circle here.
Mm-hmm.
And we have many people who might pick a dandelion seed up and create another circle and talk about whatever is meaningful to them relative to the gifts of liminal space we've just lived through. Because we're about to emerge into a new space that we can affect, that we can do something about. We don't have to live the same old, same old, same old. Even though we may have loved the same old, there were things about it, I'm sure, that all of us would like to tweak a little bit. And if we do it in circles, if we come together in some way with our friends and think about what's important to us, we can make an enormous difference. Tell us how to do that. Tell us why you think that's important.
Well, I wrote this little book, The Million Circle, How to Change Ourselves and the World. And it has to do with first the principle of starting a circle because someone in it, one or two just gets a sense of how it would be to meet regularly with other women that are sisters in some kind of intangible way, sisters that have to do with heart connections, with motivation, with a sense of sharing a commonality of values, and to find yourself in a circle where saying what's true and speaking truthfully and trustingly with this group, this circle, that is a sustaining meeting regularly, meeting for a certain time, with a sense that in the center of the circle, what we often create is the equivalent of a altar or something, or a fire or something. I mean, if you remember being at any time like a Girl Scout, where you met as a young girl in a circle out in nature with a campfire, and you met around that is an image that's very much warms the heart as you remember it. And then to think about, that's what a women's circle, a trusting women's circle is like. There is a sense that there is a sense of warmth in it, and the fire in it is the fire of feeling, the fire of activism, the fire of whatever fire, the fire that purifies and serves to be a place to meet regularly and to speak from the heart about what is truly important, and to always in silence, because different people have different, the Million Circle has a spiritual center as a source of warmth and meaning, but it isn't a particular spirituality, because what moves each of us differs quite a bit in many ways. And so to have silence where you just drop in to relationship with the spirit in the center, then you get energy from each other and from the archetype that you're sitting around, and you don't have to invent it, because there is a pattern. We share something called archetypes, and the more there are, the easier it is to form others just like it. the form is what we just drop into, and it becomes very much what people are doing on Zoom now. You know, we couldn't meet in person. So the circles that, including the Million Circle, we always now meet on Zoom, but the circles that used to meet in person regularly for a whole year have not. And then all of the people who have relatives and family members that are in other parts of the country began to form circles, and they would meet regularly on a certain, like Sunday or something. Rosemary, you spoke about your family gets together every Sunday. And the age, and there's no hierarchy of power in a circle. And so what happens maybe in this liminal time that we're in, that more and more circles have quietly formed and have been sustaining people in the circles. And maybe the family used to have somebody in charge who did all the talking, but if you continue to meet in circles, that dissolves. Everybody has a voice. And in a circle, everyone does have a voice. And that is one thing that women especially often needed to learn. And
What
it's,
I remember, I did a lot of work in Haiti for many years, and they always had women's circles. Women's circles are part of the indigenous culture. But the one thing I remember about the circles in Haiti, whenever we would get together, someone would start singing. Always they started with a song. So the people would come in at the end of a working day, when the working day was sitting in a little tiny space on a street corner selling oranges, maybe, or something. And they'd come in hot and tired and sing. So everyone started the meeting in a totally different frame of mind. It's like ringing the bell. Everyone came into the same heart space because of the music. There are different kinds of circles, different ways to do them. But they are a magical way of women connecting. And I would suggest that anyone here who doesn't have one, gather a group of friends and start a circle.
There's also a website, themillionscircle.org, I think it is.
Just put that up on the chat.
Yes.
Someone else mentioned Wangari's documentary called Taking Root, which is available through the Green Belt Movement.
Yeah. And with Sarah for Hope, which is where I get to play a lot of times now, and Sandy Hart is over there. Hi, Sandy. We do a lot of circle work, circle facilitation, helping women to become red tent facilitators, but you can be a circle for anything and everything. You can be a circle under a tree. You can be a circle. It is innate in us. And it is as old to me. It is the first form of probably interaction between humans, around that fire as we were evolving. And for us, I think as women, when we know it's innate, when we know it's part of our DNA, then you don't have to get into the technology. There is, to me, circle technology. No, it's innate in us. It's so easy to do with a few following the principles, which is where everyone is equally valued and equally shares. And it is a sacred circle.
And also remember that the women's movement in the United States began with consciousness raising groups. They weren't called circles, but that's what they were.
Yeah. The biggest revolution that has been happening, and it's been a silent scream that we did. It's been silent. It's the circle. It is the circle because it is truly the alternative to hierarchy and patriarchy. If you're a circle, and so when you get enough, you've just eroded all of that. Or the other thing is not only eroded, there's a real choice. And I have a friend who was a wonderful stand-up comic and a priest, but she said, you know, patriarchy makes you feel stupid, sick, crazy, and one other thing. And when you're feeling that way, why do you want to stay in that? That's patriarchy. Encircle, you feel loved.
Sandy, I'm going to make a suggestion that you write the Sarah website in the chat. And for those of you on this call who don't know, you can copy and save that chat so you have the information there. It appears on my clock to be 1 o'clock. I hate to end this conversation. I do want to quote two women that are very important to me. One is Wangari, we've talked about her. She said, there comes a time when humanity is called to shift to a new level of consciousness, to reach a higher moral ground, a time we have to shed our fear and give hope to one another. That time is now. And the other woman is Joanna Macy. Her words are, our lives extend beyond our skins in radical interdependence with the rest of the world. We are all one. In some incredible, unfathomable way, we are all connected. Jean, connect us one more time with your bell, and then we'll end our call.
I will sound the bell, and as you feel this vibration in your heart, perhaps an image or an idea will also start to emerge from that very same place. But we are connected at the heart level, and we feel it through the vibration of this Tibetan bowl.
I want to thank everyone who's joined us today. Thank you, Jean. Thank you, Anne. And thank you, Grace Gallant, for managing this technology. We've been a gift to each other. It's been a wonderful time. Thank you.
And thank you, Rosemary, for doing this.
Grace, would you close the meeting for us?